Welcome to one of our talks about, the title is Instant Automated Cross-Border Payouts. In true fintech fashion, we've been agile, we've reacted to the market and the resources we've got available, and we've changed it slightly. So that is the focus at the end of the presentation, but we're also, based on having Matteo here, going to talk a bit about localization and the importance of localizing your payment options as well. Approach we'll take is I'm Stuart Barclay at Trustly, our financial services business manager. I'll talk through a couple of slides and then Matteo, I can ask you a few questions. But before we do that, do you want to kind of introduce yourself and explain where you work?
Yep. Thanks for having me. Matteo Gamba, I'm product lead at Wayfair, and I take care of the product side of payments. And Wayfair is one of the biggest e-commerce for furniture and houseware. We are based in the US, but we also operate out of Canada, UK, and Germany. And our team is based in Berlin, and that's where we really operate and build the whole payment stack for our customers.
Fantastic.
Glad to be here.
Lovely. So first off, to kind of set a bit of a scene in terms of payments, the first thing is that debit is king. You know, people, particularly young people, I think, who have been kind of burnt by financial crash and kind of the implications of that, and kind of various uncertainty around, you know, housing markets and things like that, want to pay with money that they have. So 64% of Europeans, and then that's even more pronounced in the UK, with 71% of people preferring to pay with debit, so cash that they have. But the form of that paying by debit is different depending on which market you're in. In some markets, you know, it might be more card focused. In others, there'll be other payment methods as well. And I think kind of what we're saying here is that, you know, even more importantly, if you don't have those payment methods, people won't complete a payment, and you're losing revenue if you're not meeting those consumer preferences. And that, I guess, leads into one of the first questions for you, which is maybe more broadly than payments, but kind of your approach to localization. As obviously you said, you're in, you know, the UK, the States, Germany. When you're in a different market, what approach do you take?
Yep. So Wayfair has been born out of the US. It's a very American-centric company originally, but we've been quickly expanding in other markets. So Canada was first, and then UK and Germany came. And as part of that process, we obviously think about localizing the experience, making sure that we have good translations, available products, that the way to shop fits the needs of our users. And part of that means as well offering a good localized payment experience. And out of that thinking is where we actually started building a dedicated payments team out of Berlin, really with the mindset of growing and expanding the European market. We see the European market and North American market as two equally big markets in terms of total addressable market. And we see the biggest growth in Europe. And making sure that you have a very localized payment experience was one of the main reasons to build a team out of that. And what we've been doing is really looking at each market and try to understand what are the core payment methods that we need to offer in order for our customers to not drop out of checkout. And once you understand that, you also understand the different needs of different customers in different geographies and try to optimize for the long tail, understanding how can you cater to different needs and to different basket sizes and different shopping habits. And that really brought us to a point where we have a very different landscape between different markets.
And with that, I mean, how do you see payment preferences varying by different markets?
Yeah, so generally the Anglo-Saxon markets are very similar. Credit and debit cards play the major role, with PayPal coming second, having wallets like Apple Pay as another way to pay by card, but still in a smoother way. And then a long tail of financing, buy now, pay later, that are very useful for the type of merchant that we are, with expensive items and stuff that ships later in the future. So that's a kind of a composition across different markets. You do see some differences in the the distribution of funding sources among cards. So Canada is very, very credit specific. The US has a little bit more debit. The UK as well has a higher share of debit cards. Then you go to Germany and everything changes. You have very, very little card adoption, very strong preference for invoice, for PayPal, the brand presence of PayPal. And then the Klarna as well plays a key role in that. Plus the residual financing. And we've seen obviously a strong preference as well for banking products, starting from support, but also going into what we call forecast as an advance payment. That is still a very manual way to make money transfers, but you still see people choosing that. And that gives us an idea that there can be a better way to offer banking products. And we see that coming in the market.
Lovely, fantastic. I mean, that leads quite nicely onto kind of this point around kind of bank preference. Exactly as you said, it varies by market. If we take Germany, Poland, the Baltics, the Nordics, there really is a bank transfer preference. But even across Europe, if you kind of take that average, bank transfer preference is not insignificant. And if you're not offering that, there's a real risk that people won't complete their transaction. And again, as you say, like often that bank transfer process is very manual. And so what you need to do is hopefully, if you're looking around the stalls and the stands today, find a kind of automated solution to do that, of which Trustly is able to provide. And so, that's the deposit side. Then, an often neglected part of payments is the other side of that, which is the payouts or the refunds. So before we kind of dive into maybe some of the statistics, Matteo, kind of keen to get your thoughts from Wayfair's perspective on how you think about refunds and the role that can have in the customer experience.
Yep, totally. Think about Wayfair as a large e-commerce site. You need to think about the differences versus another player that might just collect the money. Like typically, if you have utilities, that's very easy to pay with a bank transfer, and that's as much as you have to do. That's where the flow ends. With e-commerce, the relationship with the customer doesn't stop at the end of checkout, and it goes on until the time when you actually maybe process a refund. And so there are two components. One is key from the merchant side. When having a partner, a solution that can offer bank transfers, is to have something that is fully automated, where you don't have to introduce manual processes, where you know that the refund is going to get to the customer, where you know that that's going to happen in a very timely manner. And that brings into the customer experience, where customers will be more keen to choose a payment method that actually gives them confidence that money will be there, will come back if there is a need to do so. And really open banking and Trustly, like those kind of solutions really go into this direction that can help the customer needs.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that kind of ties in really nicely to kind of the first point, where based on some of the research we've done in the market, 36% of e-commerce consumers, would spend more if they were offered faster refunds. But then, I'd be doing my job title disservice if I didn't mention financial services as well. We don't just see that in e-commerce, but they're in investment and trading. If you give people quicker access to their funds and better liquidity, they're keen to put more funds onto the platform. And likewise, just taking insurance as an example, if you give people access to their money quicker, it actually really builds trust and loyalty as well. So then I suppose going to what the title of the presentation was, thinking about cross-border. Cross-border payments are increasingly important as the world gets smaller. But despite that, there are problems for merchants and consumers alike. First, if you've got slow assessment speeds, it takes a long time for that money to go from a bank in one country, right across to a bank in another country, or sometimes it doesn't even arrive. There can be unexpected fees, and kind of as you mentioned, kind of similar to the refund piece, there tends to be a lot of manual entry or admin on behalf of the on the merchant. So, what does that mean in terms of Trustly? How do we deliver those kind of the fastest possible payments both cross-border, domestically, payouts, but also pay-ins as well. And there's three main areas. One is our connection to instant schemes. That's both international, looking at things like SEPA Instant, national schemes in the UK, that's going to be faster payments, but also our intrabank network. And that's what I just want to kind of explain a bit on the right-hand side of the screen. So we hold bank accounts across Europe, and it's probably easier to explain with an example how that enables local collection and then local payouts as well. So maybe we take kind of a Wayfair example. If I'm a Dutch consumer and I bank with, put me under the spot to find a Dutch bank, say ING, then but I'm purchasing something off the German Wayfair account. The flow of funds with Trustly would be, I make my payment via my ING bank. Those funds will then be collected by the Trustly ING bank in the Netherlands, and then in terms of sending them to the merchant, how that would happen is, let's say Wayfair have got a Deutsche Bank account. That money would go to Wayfair via the Trustly Deutsche Bank account. And so streamlining that process with our network of bank accounts really helps us deliver the fastest possible payment, even if it is cross-border. So a couple of points just to kind of take away. One, you need to meet that rising preference for bank transfer. And then two, you can really increase your revenue, particularly thinking about the faster payouts, both domestically and cross-border. So I guess that's what we wanted to cover. So I guess, Matteo, are there any further comments or closing remarks from your side?
No, I think that's a very good summary. I think you definitely see growing interest towards open banking. It is something that needs education on the consumer side. You need to make sure that people understand the value of that you win their fears potentially, but you see from the merchant side the benefits, and that will translate into benefits for the customer ultimately.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think that's as good place as any to end with the education being completely important. In terms of realizing these benefits, they're there, but you've got to educate the consumer so they see the benefits as well. But also, I suppose, why we're here, educating the merchants as well to realize those benefits. Lovely. So that is what we wanted to cover. We're happy to take any questions. I'm sure we'll be hanging around for a bit. But otherwise, thank you very much. And chat to you soon.
Thank you.